And we welcome you to the September 13th edition of the Rose and Blum podcast on the Iowa Everywhere Network. I am Brent Blum, joined by Sage Rosenfels. Sage, where are you today?
Iowa Everywhere. I am not in Iowa. I am in Omaha.
Close enough.
This is my lovely living room behind me. I'm currently sort of sitting in my kitchen, and this is sort of the way it goes. Sometimes my room that I did the podcast in our first episode upstairs, I'm repainting. Sort of had like a nice sort of brown, sort of a brownie brown sort of color. You know what I mean? So like it was like very eatable walls, but I'm gonna go with like some sort of off-white or something like that. Alabaster, I think, is what the guy who's going to paint it is going to pick. So
did you get the color swatches out and you chose alabaster?
Well, it was the same color of my daughter's room that I did a few months ago, and we like that. So we're just going to keep going with the same alabaster, probably just for the discount on the paint or something, economies of scale type of scenario. So today we're doing it in here, which I've done my fair share of podcasts, radio shows and things from this spot. I've done the Colin Cowherd show a few times from this spot. The only issue is it's a little echoey sometimes because I'm one of those kitchens that has one of those like giant islands. So I feel like there's no, everything bounces off sound wise for the island. So it's probably not the best situation, but it is what it is. Last week I was in Maine. And so we can start off with the Sage Rosenfels travels if you'd like.
Yes, please. I mean, that's I think what people tune in for, and we'll get to the Cy-Hawk game, of course. And
we will get to the Cy-Hawk game. So since this is sort of like the journeyman quarterback podcast or whatever. So last week about 2 months ago, I got asked to call that first Iowa State game, and I couldn't do it. My girlfriend, one of her closest friends, is getting married. Her friend is getting married. My girlfriend in Boston, and so we went to Boston, the wedding. I was in Maine for the podcast last week. And then from there, we drove back to Boston, flew to Los Angeles, got to LAX, rented a car, drove to Joshua Tree, spent 2 days in Joshua Tree, which really was phenomenal.
Recommend?
And highly recommend.
Okay.
It's like you're on the moon. Which I've been to a few places like that. Actually, Las Vegas, oddly enough, if you leave the city of Las Vegas and go out to like Red Rocks, which is the west side of Las Vegas, it feels like you're on the moon there too. I mean, it's just sort of eerie and weird and rocks it's really fun. I'm not a big, I like hiking, but I don't like going on like 4-hour hikes, right? I like to just sort of, tromp around the forest or the mountains or whatever it is for an hour, maybe an hour and a half. But I'm not one that's like, hey, we're going to start at the bottom of a mountain and we're going to walk up for the next day and a half to the top to search for some view and then walk back. That's like a lot for me. So this was more like the bouldering, where you just sort of have these like mounds of big, crazy rocks and you just sort of walk up on them and walk around them and sort of you try to kill yourself basically. But it was a blast. We had a sweet Airbnb, had a pool, which you got to have, I think, in Joshua Tree because it's so dry everywhere. But the trees are weird. That's the whole thing, is like there's these things they're like cactus, but they're not cactus, they're trees. It's like this mixed tree cactus thing, and I don't know if they're found anywhere else but Joshua Tree. It's sort of like an oddity in nature. So anyways,
I was gonna ask, who's Joshua and what's the deal with his trees?
I don't know, but I think you have to ask Bono from U2 because that's, I don't think half people would even know what Joshua Tree is.
I don't know, exactly.
That great album.
Right.
1989.
I even know that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you went to the Chargers game, right?
Well, not even there yet. So my girlfriend's daughter is sort of moving in. She's going to school in Santa Barbara. And so we drove from Joshua Tree, which is like just on the east side of LA, all the way to west of LA for about 3.5-4 hours, sort of through LA. By the way, LA just simply goes on forever.
Did you take the 405?
At some point when I was in Los Angeles, you always end up in the 405.
Oh, always.
Yeah. So no, we took like the 10 to the 210 to the it's like a Saturday Night Live episode. But yeah, all the way to Santa Barbara. I spent my Friday night putting her daughter's bed together that we had ordered, and so that was always fun.
What a guy!
The little wrenches, and your fingers were like bleeding. That was great. So then from there we drove back Friday night to Los Angeles, where my son goes to school at Loyola Marymount, home of the great Hank Gathers.
That's right.
Bo Kimball. And spent a couple days there, and then yesterday on Sunday, I should say, we went to the Chargers Raiders game, which really was a blast, and had never been SoFi
What'd you think
before. It's incredible.
Is it?
It is. I mean, I was at the Iowa State game in Las Vegas last year, so you've seen that. You've been in that dome, or do you call those domes? I guess just indoor stadium,
right? Allegiant.
Yeah,
right.
Indoor stadium. So it was beautiful, right? This thing puts that to shame. This thing makes that look junior college a little bit.
How about compared to Jerry's World in
way
Dallas?
better?
Really? Because I was blown away by Jerry's World when we were there for the Big 12.
Well, the thing about the one in Los Angeles is it's actually outdoors. That whole covering you see is really just like this sort of faux roof. It's open air. Right.
Interesting.
It's not completely enclosed. And so I don't know. It was just a super sweet experience. And of course, a great rivalry that
it's a good game too, right?
Great game. The AFC West, you got the Chiefs, the Broncos. We saw that game last night, of course. My goodness. It reminded me, by the way, of the Nebraska-Iowa State game with the fumbles inside the 5-yard line from 2009, or you know what year
2009, you got it.
Yeah, there you go. It had hints of that at the end of that game. And of course, San Diego and Oakland, and Devontae Adams, going to I shouldn't say Oakland, the Las Vegas Raiders, excuse me. The funny thing is like the most common, I shouldn't say the most common, the largest fan base of NFL fans in Southern California is a team that is in Nevada. That's the funny thing, because the Raiders had way more fans of that.
I was going to say it looked like it on the highlights that I saw.
I would say it was 60-40, maybe even more. I'd give it to Chargers fans. They were loud during the game, like they did their best. But and Raiders fans are a special type of fan. My son has, I think, sort of become a Raiders fan. Like we brought his buddy to the game, who's from Oakland. He's a huge Raiders fan. So my son's buying like a $10 hat in the parking lot from some guy selling like illegal hats. So he's wearing this hat during the game. And my son likes the Raiders because they said he's going to Loyola Marymount. What he misses about going to school in California is the Midwestern fan base, the Midwestern passion, whether it's Iowa State or Iowa or the Vikings or the Bears, or you're right. I mean, there's the Midwesterners. We don't have surfing. We don't have all the mountains. We love our sports. And I think we really focus on them. And in the West Coast, I mean, we all know about the UCLA games. They're getting 10 or 15,000 over there. And if USC's not really good, no one goes to those games. And it's just, it's just not a sports passionate as the Midwesterners. And so he adopted the Raiders for the game just because he loves the passion of the fans. And so it was a really, really good game. Came right down to the wire. Our first seats were sort of up top, and at halftime you could see some seats down below. So it's like, let's work our way down below. Of course, and you sit in some seats for a while, then you get kicked out. Then you sit some other ones, you get kicked out.
And then you don't have a ticket guy?
Well, I mean, yeah, but ticket guy got me in the 307 section, which is like which is up top. They're free, I mean, for that game, it was $250 a ticket for the worst seat in the house. Worst, anything down below was, you're talking $1,000 a ticket. And I enjoy going to NFL games, but not $5,000 worth. So we work our way down below. But here's the best part: as we're walking down below, we're walking in one of the aisles, and I get somebody yells my name. I look up, and it's my old friend Chantel. Now Chantel, she is from San Diego. She went to high school with Ricky Williams, so I've known her going way back to the Miami days.
Crazy,
right? So we used to see her, and we were all sort of friends or whatever. And Chantel is Dwayne Wade's executive assistant. So next thing you know, we're in Dwayne Wade's box.
Of course. America's guest.
I know.
Sage Rosenfeld.
We missed Dwayne and Gabrielle Union too, unfortunately. So we had to watch the fourth quarter in this box. What's interesting about SoFi, by the way, is since it's not indoors, it's not air conditioned. So, usually Southern California doesn't have, at least where the stadium is, you go out in the valley and it gets really warm, but you sort of stay halfway near the coast. It stays usually in the 80s, and it was probably 95 that day. It's been exceptionally warm in Los Angeles lately. And it was very warm in the stadium. That roof just felt like you were in a greenhouse. It was warm. We're like Allegiant in Vegas, or up in Minnesota at US Bank. It's a true dome. And so it is like air conditioned, right? And this was not. So it was warm in the sun, and you're getting baked out there. I don't think they expect too many games over the course of the year to be that warm. And so, I mean, I think it makes sense. Probably saves them $100 million or something like that to not have to full dome and put in the air conditioning units and all those things. But you know who did have air conditioning? Dwayne
Wade's box. Yeah, of course he did.
That was nice. That was a nice way to end the game. As
what was the food and drink situation in the Dwayne Wade box?
Whatever you want. It was quite wonderful. It was wonderful.
This is why this podcast is tremendous. Sage Rosenfels always just ends up somewhere.
My girlfriend doesn't like the phrase America's Guest, by the way. It's partly true. I did say to her, and she knows this by now, we've been dating for a couple of years, that like I do find myself in unusual situations
you do.
where I get these little perks sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, before
That's
the game, had some sideline passes. My good buddy Richmond's a coach's agent in the NFL. I don't know in college football. I don't know how many, maybe 70 coaches or something, but represents Brandon Staley, represents Mike McDaniel, represents Nathaniel Hackett, Robert Saleh. Richmond it's a great story. He played for a couple years in the NFL. His dad, Richmond Flowers is his name. His dad was actually like an Olympic style sprinter way back in the, I don't know, probably the 70s or 80s. And he and I came out the same year. He was a wide receiver. He was fast too. He only played for a couple of years in the league, and then he was out. And but then he got into coaching, and he got into coaching by making a phone call to Mike Shanahan, who had just got the head coaching job with Washington 2010. Well, how do you know Mike Shanahan? Well, he recruited Kyle Shanahan to Duke coming out of high school when Kyle was coming out of high school as a wide receiver. And so he's on the staff as a quality control. And in the NFL, quality control is basically the same thing as in college of grad assistants, right? You're sort of like the lowest coach in the totem pole. And you do all sort of the paperwork, the grunt work, and building of the playbooks. And you don't really do much coaching. You really do more administrative stuff. But you have to sort of learn that to then when you become a coach, you learn how all that stuff works, right? Well, the other coaches on that staff in 2010 in Washington, well, you had Mike Shanahan, head coach. You had Kyle Shanahan, offensive coordinator. You had Matt LaFleur, quarterbacks coach. Mike LaFleur, quality control. Robert Saleh was a defensive coach. I mean, just a crazy that. I mean, there's really
that's the coaching tree.
This coaching tree. So he said he realized, one, if he would have known what coaches know, he would have been a better wide receiver rather than just like trying to get faster and play harder. He would actually understood how defenses work. So it really changed his perspective. Like, man, I wish I would have had better knowledge of the game and true understanding of defenses. And he knew he didn't want to coach. He knew that was not the life for him. So he got into representing coaches, which he does now very, very well. So he hooked me up with some sideline passes before the game, which is really cool for me. Because I know a lot. I mean, I go to NFL games.
You still know a lot of people, right?
You know a lot of people, even though if I don't play for the teams,
right?
People move around so much. I mean,
it's a small world.
It's a small world. The former Vikings assistant special teams coach is the Chargers head special teams coach now, right? I do some quarterbacks camps, and a couple of the coaches that come to our camps, Shane Day is a quarterbacks coach for the Chargers, and his assistant quarterbacks coach is a guy named Chandler Whitmer. Can I tell you Chandler Whitmer story, by the way?
It's your podcast,
no one
brother.
That's listening to this knows who this guy is. It doesn't
I don't
matter.
know.
It's a great story. When he was 9 years old, Chandler was a quarterback in the Atlanta area, and his dad gets him some private instruction from this guy named Ron. And I know this guy. His name is Ron Veal. And Ron is one of these original sort of quarterbacks coaches. Played quarterback way back in the day at Arizona. And he was starting to get into sort of quarterbacks training world. That was really sort of a new thing, 15 or 20 years ago. And as Chandler works his way up, plays high school ball, after high school, goes to college and comes back, and he starts working with a couple young quarterbacks when they're freshmen in high school. One guy's name is Justin Fields. The other guy's name is Trevor Lawrence. So he's working with Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence. He ends up getting, works those guys through high school, ends up getting a job at Yale, coaching at Yale. Gets hired by Ryan Day at Ohio State because when Justin Fields transfers from Georgia to
Yeah.
Ohio State. He wanted like a friendly face on that staff or around because he didn't know anybody, et cetera, et cetera. And so Chandler gets hired at Ohio State as like an O-line assistant or something like that, which is actually great. When you want to be a coordinator, it's great to spend some time like with the O-line, even if you're a quarterback, because you just have to know what all those guys go through and how they do their process, right? So he's there for a year, 2 years, gets hired away to Clemson because Dabo wants to steal all Ohio State stuff, right?
Yep.
So Dad was like, what are they? Because, as you know, it's Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and like whoever the fourth team is who makes the BCS playoffs. Sometimes it's Notre Dame, sometimes it's, whoever it is, right? So he gets hired to Clemson for a year, 2 years, and then he gets hired to the Chargers, and he's now in the NFL. I mean, what a ride. What a ride, right? And
the coach, everybody has a story like that, though, that made it. I mean, it's honestly, when I'm bored and I'm watching an NFL game, one of my favorite things to do, and again, I'm a nerd, which you guys all know this, I will look at the coaches when they show the coordinators or they show even the head coaches. You look at their Wikipedia, and it is crazy. Like they literally, like you said, they have to have all these crazy stops. The life of a football coach is not very glamorous because you literally have to move. That's why the Campbell regime is really unique for Iowa State, because they've had the same collection of guys mostly for 6 years now, and that is not typical at all. Normally it's 2 to 3 years a place, and especially if you're on the lower end, you're hopping somewhere else.
Well, the guys that are coaching, small college first.
Yes.
There's always more money out there to bigger college. So every single year they're sort of trying to move up the ladder. That's why I've always felt like if I get into coaching, I don't want to do that. I'd want to go, no offense, I'd want to go right to the top and see what I could do at the top and try to stay somewhere for a while, but yeah, it's a hard business on them. If they're married, families, and have kids, it's on them. Brutal. I mean, it's really, I would say if you want to be a major college college coach or NFL coach, don't get married and don't have kids for a while. You're going
to have to move a lot.
You're not going to see them for one, and you're going to have to move a lot, and you're just going to have just go have some crappy apartment, put all the money you make in the bank. You're never going to be able to spend it anyway because you're just going to be working in the office all the time.
Correct.
And wait a while until you sort of become a little bit more solidified with your career before you start dipping into your personal life. That's not always the way it goes, and by the way, hats off to the wives, the girlfriends, the families, even the children who sort of go through this journey. And again, I saw it in pregame on the sidelines. You see some of those families there, and the players or coaches come over and take a picture with their crews. And I sort of know what this is a big highlight for them.
For them too, right?
They probably haven't seen their husbands in 6 weeks.
The hours put in. I know these guys get paid well, but so let's transition us to the Cyhawk game, because that was clearly something that was important to the Iowa State staff, and they won't come out and say it, but they had this one targeted all summer long. Iowa State did some unique things in this game schematically that we really haven't seen before. But I'm sure you got a chance to at least watch it when you were hanging out with Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union.
No. I did. We actually got.
What'd you think?
We found a sports bar in West Hollywood called Barney's Beanery, and I was like, my son does a Google search, Iowa State bar in Los Angeles.
Let's give him a shout out. Yeah.
I think it was Barley or Barney. I think it was Barney's Beanery. So we walk up to this place. I'm like, this place looks like a coffee shop, right? You walk in, and it was the best dive sports bar that I've ever been into. The place was packed. Half the place, there's sort of two sides to it, and the left side was all Iowa State fans.
Nice.
It was great, and the right side was sort of more like the bar, and other games were going on, and you saw those Texas fans that were there, drinking their sorrows away, which is always nice to see. And the cool thing about it is I'm ordering a beer at the bar. There's water dripping on me, I think from the air conditioning unit up top, right? And it's just on the ground, and people just accept it.
It's like you're lumpies.
I love this place. This is the ultimate dive bar. It's not raining outside, and there's water dripping all over me. So had a great time watching it with those Iowa State fans. Then we played the Flippy Cup beer drinking game afterwards on like a pool table that was
Look at
covered.
you.
I
Look at
know.
you. Like reliving your college days right there.
We had a great time. I also realized that my 21-year-old son has no idea how to drink because he's spilling these little shots of beer all over himself. So, I mean, I guess that's probably a good sign that he's like,
yeah, you should be proud. Teaching moment. But what do you think? I mean, for Iowa State to win it, have you ever seen a game, first of all, with a team that has 2 punts blocked, has 2 turnovers in their opponent's end zone, and an additional turnover on top of that, and still won the game? I mean, the odds against that are astronomical.
Because those are all, we used to call these TAP plays, TAP, turnaround point, right? And Iowa State's first turnaround point play was 3 minutes into the game. I mean, 3 minutes in the game, we have punted, had it blocked, and they've scored a touchdown on what, 2 or 3 plays or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I can't believe it, because, you know, we've all been at these Iowa State games, especially versus Iowa, where it just seems like we shoot ourselves in the foot. And, you know, even a few years ago, where we were, they were punting and we touched it or whatever. 1918 game. Like, hey, we have all the momentum. We're going to go win this thing. We're going to get the ball to Brock Purdy, and then we lose it. And special teams have really been an Achilles heel for the Cyclones for a number of years. One of the weaknesses sometimes of Matt's teams have been just the occasional special teams blunder, unfortunately. I know they hired a guy, I believe from the Rams, who came in. He had worked with McVay. I talked to him a little bit at practice, and I was sort of hoping that would solve these issues. But, man, 2 block punts in this game, obviously early on, and I'm like, just what a terrible way to start. And then Iowa didn't score for 57 minutes. I think to have all that happen, right, to have 2 block punts, to have 2 interceptions, one of them in the end zone, you have to have the other side be worse. And Iowa was worse in some ways, at least from maybe they didn't make as many mistakes.
Sure.
But from a futility standpoint of just incredibly crappy offense all the way around, from protection to the actual quarterback himself, to the play calling, I believe, by Brian Ferentz, which I don't think is very good. It's sort of shocking to me. What's shocking about it is Iowa every year puts in like 3 offensive linemen in the NFL, and a lot of times a tight end, and a lot of times they're picked in the first round or the first few rounds, or even guys that are 6th and 7th rounders. It seems like they make it for 8 years in the NFL. So like, it seems like they have this sort of dominating talent up front. And then we have, you know, the Iowa State defense, which again, I love John Haycock to me, of all of Matt Campbell's success, other than Matt, of course.
Yes.
John Haycock has been, I think, really the glue behind the scenes. If people don't really, you know, everyone just knows it's Matt Campbell as the Iowa State head coach, but these coordinators are so important, and he is simply been phenomenal. There are games they give up 40 points, absolutely, but they have played time and time again some really, really good opponents, and really sort of given the offense a chance to win the football game, as we are sort of consistently inconsistent. We have, I feel like, games where we put up a lot of yards, but then at the wrong time, we can't get that first down, or we turn the ball over. We do a lot of good things, but it seems like we can not always like string them together in consistent drives. Well, we had that in this game, 99 yards, 21 plays, which, by the way, we need to name that drive. Has it come up with a name yet? Like on the Twitterverse?
The drive is kind of that's a little simplified. This game in some corners of the internet is called El Asico, for good reason. So some have called it El Drivico, which I think is pretty good.
Well, can you explain this to me? I'm not getting the reference.
So there's a soccer. You have to look it up. There's a soccer game. I think. I don't know who it's between. I think it's called El Trafico or something. Well, Spencer Hall, who writes for SB Nation, I don't know if he's with them anymore, years ago coined the Iowa State game El Asico because of the numerous mistakes and just bizarre happenings within the game.
Yeah.
And it has stuck in the corners of the internet because, honestly, like, that game Saturday was a perfect example of El Asico.
Yeah.
Like just chaos.
Both sides.
Both sides. Both sides. So that's where El Asico comes from. Who's, by the way, great Twitter follow, Spencer Hall. But so some have called it El Drivico. That's kind of a deep in the back of the internet reference. But for now, we'll just go with the drive.
You have to be in the know.
You have to be in the know to know that.
Blum is in the know. I like 99 yards, 99 counties, one goddamn win.
So what's that like as a quarterback? Because you won in Kinnick. You're backed up. It's the fourth quarter. You're at the 1 yard line. Dekkers has already thrown 2 interceptions. I mean, that is a brutal spot to be in, but God, he just seemed cool, calm, and collected in that entire process.
You know what? You're at the bottom of like steps, or like you're at an airport where you've walked underneath like a tarmac from like B terminal, in Chicago or something like that. And you're underground, and then they have an escalator, and they also have like stairs. And you look up at that thing, and it feels like it's like 9 floors above you. You have to walk up these steps or take this escalator. That's what it feels like when you're at the 1 yard line. It literally feels like you're in a basement and you're looking uphill. It's the worst, and you feel like a wall behind you, because you do actually have
like you do feel that, right? Like you feel
25,000 people right behind you, and it's weird. Like when you're in a football game, you're sort of out on this stage, but when you're backed up inside, even like the 10 yard line, it just feels like any mistake you make can be super detrimental. You feel good when you're out near the 50. You feel like you're sort of going downhill in a sense, but when you're backed up like that, it's really a sort of a terrible feeling. And the first thing you try to do is get the defense to jump off sides, which I believe they did on that drive. They run the ball and then they got an offsides. But
the second play,
if you're on the 1 or 2 yard line, it doesn't hurt you if you jump off sides. It only hurts the defense. And so, to go from the 2 to the 1, not to the end of the world, but to go from the 2 to the 7 is a huge win. And so, of course, you want to hard count them, try to get them off sides. A lot of times it's great to like motion around and try to time it like it seems like it's a on one, and try to get the defense to jump. So that's the first thing, is just gain that breathing room and gain that first down. That's one thing that I think that people don't realize, whether it's 2-minute drill or a situation like that, or really any drive, is we think about all these drives, but that first down is so huge, because if you don't get a first down there, you're punting. They're going to get the ball probably 40 yard line,
right? Or get it blocked.
Or get it blocked because you only have 9. You only have 11, 12 yards of space, and usually have 14 or 15. And so when you shorten that distance, then the punter can't step into it as much as he would like to. So you really have to get some space, even just for the punter. But if you can get that first down, which they got, and then you get a second one, and you're like, okay, we're rolling here. Now you're starting to feel good about yourself. And they just sort of there was a lot of third downs. I don't know how many. 5 third downs on that drive, which were huge. And it just a wonderful feeling it has to be for that offense, who had struggled. They moved the ball, it seemed like, throughout the game here and there, but they just couldn't put something consistently together. And that was a 21-play drive is about as good as you're going to get in football, whether it's National Football League or college football. And so just a huge drive all around. The game-winning pass to Xavier Hutchinson, you could see it, all-out blitz coming.
Okay.
And when there's all-out blitzes defensively, all the secondary players play inside technique, because there's no safety in the middle, right? Everyone's coming. And if everyone comes, they're at the minimum are going to have one more guy than you. So you have to get rid of the ball. And basically they're gambling that if you don't get rid of the ball, one of our guys is going to get you. And so you have to be really thinking about and cognizant about it as a quarterback of, I got to get rid of the ball. And sometimes it's even sort of fading away off your back foot, but giving your guys a chance. And with that inside technique, it's really hard to play just a simple fade route, because you're sort of giving that up. The sideline's your only friend. And so that's basically what happened. There was a little sort of
hand fight,
a little bit of a fight, but I think it seemed like to me like the Iowa guy mostly just fell down more than anything. I think they were tussling a little bit, but it looked like to me the Iowa guy more just sort of tripped and fell down. And of course, easy catch for Xavier, and a big win for the Cyclones.
So I think the biggest difference in this game, I thought the Iowa State offensive line was great. I mean, that was a concern going in. I thought Trevor Downing at center in that atmosphere was really good. But then the skill players, I mean, clearly Iowa State had Xavier Hutchinson. Iowa did not. As a quarterback, how comforting is it in that environment to have a guy like X who you know is going to be there and catch everything. It seemed like he had 19 targets on Saturday, Sage. It's like whenever Hunter it was looking for number 8 out there.
Yeah. It's great to have a player who's he knows how to get open. And sometimes that's man-to-man coverage and learn how to beat people man-to-man and create separation. That's one. The other, knowing how to get open, is understanding defenses and finding soft spots and zones. And that's can't always be taught. Like, you can teach them so much, but there is a feel thing there for receivers of sort of finding the open grass. And you have all these spots in the field that you're trying to run these routes to, and you design all these things. And you're supposed to be on the hash, you're supposed to be over here by the numbers. But there's also, then it comes down to just a feel, because if on the hash there's a linebacker sitting there, you don't want to go to the hash. You want to go 2 yards off the hash,
sure.
Right? So Charlie Kolar was awesome at that, and Xavier's really good at that too. And hats off to Tom Manning for trying to get the ball and designing plays to get the ball to
really did right away.
Best wide receiver, and right away, and then throughout the game, and you just keep doing that. I like that with Josh McDaniels was doing that with Devontae Adams in that Oakland game. First play of the game, they threw Devontae Adams the ball. Just go ahead. We're just going to keep trying to feed this guy, because we know more often than not, 2/3 of the time we design a play as our number one receiver being the number one guy. He's going to get a lot of catches and good things happen. And so hats off to Tom Manning for designing those plays. Hats off for Xavier. I don't know if Xavier's how good of an NFL player he will be. He might want to be one of those guys who's just a phenomenal college football player.
I mean, so the thought with him, and I'm curious your opinion, because he was probably maybe 4th, 5th round coming out last year, but he got injured at one point in the season, so decided to stick it out. And what he has said in the offseason, I think he's had a tremendous start to the year, clearly. But he lived in the film room. To your point about the coach before, that he has now understanding. I can't just be an athlete out here. I have to know where I'm going. Yeah. And I think you're starting to see that through the first 2 games. Is he's now understanding the game, not only physically, but more so mentally, and that's why he's been so productive.
Knowledge causes the game to slow down, because you can anticipate. And when you're standing out there, whether it's a wide receiver or a quarterback or an offensive lineman or defense too, the more you know and the more you understand, and that sincerely just takes time and good coaching, the better you can play. And it's sort of, if you have the speed and the strength and the size and the hands and all those things, that's great. But if you have knowledge, that's even more powerful. And for receivers, especially those that come in from junior college and you're a freshman, you've only been there for a year, you're coming from a place where probably there's not a deep knowledge of coaching, whether it's high school or junior college football, into something that has a lot better smarts and the game's more complex. And so every year you're in, whether it's college football or pro football, you just learn more and more and more. And physically, did Xavier Hutchinson get that much better in the offseason? I don't know, maybe a teeny bit, right? But mentally, you get a huge advantage, because you do have the entire offseason. As soon as the season ends, as soon as the bowl game's done, in offseason, all you do is lift weights and run. And
that's right.
So, what else you can do but go in and watch some film and watch yourself, watch other wide receivers. I know that video staff over there extremely well. Mike Morrill's been there for 97 years, I believe. And he knows how to go and say, hey, who do you want to watch? You want to watch Cooper Kupp? All right. You want to watch one of the best guys in the league, who's not a 4.32 guy and 6'5", but just has 140 catches or whatever he had last year.
Great example. Yeah.
Go find a guy like him. He sort of reminds me of Cooper
I like
Kupp,
that.
sort of size-wise and feel and those types of things. And of course, a good route runner, as they like to say, and reliability. But that reliability comes off of knowledge. And hats off to Xavier for increasing his knowledge of the game.
So on the other end, what do you do with a broken Iowa offense right now, if you're them? I mean, honestly, I haven't seen, and Iowa State's defense had something to do with it. That kind of gets overshadowed. They had Will McDonald playing like a defensive tackle, standing up at one point. Be curious your opinion on like that whole mechanic. But gosh, I feel bad for Spencer Petras, because it's like they don't have anybody to throw to.
I have not felt bad for an Iowa quarterback.
Okay, maybe not. I mean, he's getting killed. But
Yes.
who's he? I mean, I don't know. I didn't see anybody open either. What is he supposed to do?
From my history recently of watching the Hawkeyes, which is, it's I of course watch the Iowa State game every year. And then I catch pieces here and there of other games. And what I always see is, again, their defense, for one, generally plays about 3 defenses. They sort of play cover 4 most of the time, and occasionally change it up with some other coverages. But they do very little on defense. It's very sound. I mean, they know it very, very well. And on offense, what I see is really good O-line play. I see NFL style like blocking schemes and zone, right? So when you have that type of offense, under center, running the ball, inside zone, outside zone, those types of things, you have to have a great play action game. You have to. It's sort of the offset. Hey, if we're going to run the ball and you guys are going to fill all your gaps aggressively, linebackers and safeties coming up and hitting, because, when you go across the board from the X receiver on the left to the Z receiver on the right, there are gaps all along the way. And every defensive player has a responsibility within those gaps, right? From the nose tackle who's between the guard and the center to a linebacker who's in the next gap to the other tackle, right? So everyone has these gaps. And when you force a defense to play those gaps, they're now not in their drop back passing spots and say zone coverage, right? So what you have to do is have great play action, all right, by design, by understanding of what secondaries do to have certain pass patterns. But what happens is when you fake the ball with the O-line, the running backs, the quarterbacks, those linebackers step up, and now there's these huge cavities in the secondary behind the linebackers and in front of the safeties. And I'm telling you, if you're a free safety and you see that play action and you feel this big hole in the secondary, right? You're the free safety back there and you're backpedaling when the ball is snapped. And all of a sudden you just see this like 20 yards of space between you and the linebackers.
Sure.
It's the worst feeling
in
the world.
Yeah.
Because what if they catch it? There's all this
Where do I
space,
go? Yeah.
Right. And if I'm too aggressive, someone's going to go over the top of me. But what Iowa has not had, in my experience of watching them play, is in that style of offense, you have to have super fast wide receivers. That is not a possession receiver offense. You know what a possession receiver offense is? The old Texas Tech run and gun.
5-yard outs.
Yeah. It's all this quick little stuff. The little Wes Welker-y stuff underneath, the Julian Edelman stuff underneath. Those are great when you're throwing the ball 60 times a game because it's all this little dink and dunk and get the ball in your guys with space. And those guys have to understand defense and things like that and get separation underneath. But you don't want Wes Welker running post routes, right? You don't want Wes Welker running anything, deep, high corners, right? But you need to have at least 1 or 2 super fast. They don't all have to be super fast. You have to have a couple guys that scare the crap out of the defense so much that it backs up those safeties, it backs up those corners, and which makes those cavities behind the linebackers even bigger. And Iowa just never seems to get those guys. They seem to get these sort of possession receivers, which don't go into a run play action style of offense.
Interesting.
So
That's good
I'm not trying to give Iowa the inside scoop of what is wrong.
I'm sure they know this too, right? I mean, they know.
But you can go out and find fast guys that maybe they're raw and they're not sort of great. Just go find track guys. You do, and you have to have a couple on your team. We signed. When I was in Houston, we signed Andre Davis. Andre Davis was like Michael Vick's wide receiver at Virginia Tech.
Okay.
I think he was a second-round pick, but he was truly just a track guy. He didn't have great hands. He was our kickoff returner, but we would have him be in certain spots on all of our play action. It was like, all right, Andre Johnson on one side, and then we had Kevin Walter, who was about a 4.51
guy. Stanford guy.
Side.
Yeah.
Sort of no, Kevin Walter was like Eastern Michigan.
Oh, I'm thinking, okay.
He was sort of like Alan Lazard, right?
Okay.
He's a big, strong
bigger
body,
guy.
really good blocker, really smart, can play all the positions, but he's not going to separate and blow past people, right? Dependable, all those things you want, but not going to blow past people. So, but when we needed, to create those big cavities and scare the crap out of the defense, we would just take Kevin out and put Andre Davis in there. And believe me, the DBs and the safeties, they knew who are the fast guys. And so immediately they're like Andre Johnson on one side, Andre Davis on the other side. Whether Andre Davis had great hands is going to catch the ball or not was inconsequential, right? It was the fact that he is going to run past people, which then open up these huge holes for Andre Johnson, who was our number one, Pro Bowl, I think, Hall of Fame wide receiver, despite the fact that he had me throwing to him and David Carr and Matt Schaub too. But he, to me, was a Hall of Fame wide receiver. And but you have to have those types of guys, and I never see Iowa have those types of guys, and I don't know how you find them, but Iowa has a track team. You know what I mean? I mean, there are fast guys out there who aren't great wide receivers come out of the high school, that you just need to find a couple super fast guys. They don't all have to be. You just need one or two, but they have to be in for those specific play action plays.
That's good stuff. So I know you got to prep for the Iowa State Ohio game. Should be interesting. I actually think Ohio's got a decent offense. Defense leaves something to be desired. I like the over in that game. I know you can't comment on that, but quick thoughts on the NFL before you got to run. What stood out to you? Your Vikings. Impressive over the Pack.
A couple of things that stuck out to me. The Vikings went over the Pack. Was big. Last year, Aaron Rodgers, they lost like 38-6.
Yeah, they got destroyed.
There's something about the Packers' first game of the year. They just sort of suck.
Why doesn't he? So I want to ask you real quick. Why don't these guys play in the preseason anymore? Because it seems like the guys that didn't play in the preseason from the quarterback spot, they went like 2-7 on Sunday.
3-8.
Yeah. All right. There you go.
The quarterbacks that didn't play in the preseason at all went 3-8. I don't know. I think it's a new idea that McVay started a few years ago.
Okay.
Well, they won the Super Bowl, so they're doing something right. But I will say, I saw Trey Wingo, the old ESPN NFL Live host, and some team had nobody on the injured list going into the game, and his tweet was, "This will be the only time this happens all year to any team for the rest of the year for the next 5 months," right?
Yeah.
And so I think the point is a little rust is better than a couple guys out with for the whole year.
True.
Because guys do get hurt in the preseason, and the NFL season, especially with 17 games, is just brutal. And so I think they're thinking the long game. We might be a little rusty first game, but if we're 0-1, that's better than having 2 or 3 guys out for the whole year. And listen, I expect the Packers to be, 11-6, 12-5. I think they're going to be in the hunt. Kirk Cousins to me is still Kirk Cousins. I mean, he won this one, but we'll see how that goes throughout the year. If they're going to be 9-8 or 8-9 or whatever they're going to be, it seems like what
one or the other
is. But Justin Jefferson is a absolute stud. I mean, the way he runs and his flexibility and the way he is so smooth on his routes and sort of wiggles in there and creates separation, and he really has it all for wide receiver. I think he's the best wide receiver in the NFL right now. But out of a couple of teams I want to bring up, shout out to the Vikings. Yep. Shout out to Justin Herbert. He was simply phenomenal in that game. And by the way, one of the reasons Herbert, I think, is so good, he does have great coaching. Joe Lombardi is their offensive coordinator. Also used to be the quarterback's coordinator for Sean Payton and Drew Brees in the Saints. So they're running the Saints offense, which was very quarterback friendly.
Good stuff.
I loved the way it was designed. And so I think that's really big for Justin Herbert. Mahomes, of course, was big in that game on the road, lights out. And Geno Smith. Hats off to Geno Smith. Year 9.
Enemy number 1 for Iowa State fans, by the way. You heard this story?
No.
Geno Smith is enemy number 1 for Iowa State fans from back in the day. So when they joined the conference in 2012, West Virginia played at Iowa State, and Geno was the quarterback. Well, they got in a tussle around halftime. Geno Smith got into it with Wally Burnham, 73-year-old Wally Burnham, and I think shoved him at one point. Anyway, so he's still who shoves a 73-year-old man? Stop it, Geno. And then he get I don't Wally talked a lot of shit. I mean, honestly. So maybe he did, but
yeah.
Anyway, good for Geno.
There is a thing that's very real, that when you come into the league, it's such a huge jump from college football. And of course, not for some guys. For some guys, they're running sort of NFL style stuff, and so they get to the league and they've heard about these concepts and they've talked about these types of plays and coverages and defense, and they've had responsibilities to change plays. And other college offenses are very, very different. So these college quarterbacks who make it to the NFL, there's a vast array of what they know. There's physical skills you see at the combine, but knowledge-wise, there's a vast array of what they know. And it takes a number of years. And so those guys that come in and play right away, a lot of times they're unsuccessful. As we all know, it's like 50-50 with first round draft picks. But if you're unsuccessful, like Geno was, I think he was a second round draft.
Yes, like the first pick of the second round, I think.
But if you last for 5 or 6 or 7 years and you just keep practicing, you just keep learning, you end up being a backup somewhere else. So you got that playing time in those first couple seasons, you flame out. But if you can just keep working, you do get better, right? You just do get better because you understand the game more and more and more. You get all those practice reps, all those off-season reps, all the preseason reps. And so I think there's this spot where guys who get to year 7, year 8, year 9, or Geno is, the game has now started to slow down for him, and it's not sort of too big for him anymore. And I'm sort of rooting for him a little bit. Of course, maybe you know,
kind of like your history.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Yeah, for mine, I mean, I was a third string quarterback for a number of years and worked my way to number 2. And I felt like I was sort of like, hey, I can do this about year 7 or 8. Is like I can really do this as a, you know, possibly a starter in this league. So just more and more time. So those guys, what I call those gold stars. They get gold stars for me, right? Of course, Josh Allen was pretty dang good, but he threw a couple of interceptions in that game. The Brown Star Award goes to Jerry Jones and the Cowboys.
Oh my gosh.
Congratulations. And anytime I can give Brown Star Awards to Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, I'm going to do that. Because they're definitely, it's like the Yankees, Notre Dame, and the Cowboys are the teams that I just love rooting against. And probably the Lakers too. I probably throw the Lakers in there as well. And so I'm not happy that Dak Prescott is out for sounds like 6 to 8 weeks or 10 weeks or something with broken hand or whatever. But it's nothing better than the Cowboys just sucking, and they sort of sucked the other night, and they got a long road ahead of them.
It was a tough day for the Cowboys fans because Notre Dame lost as well. Thankfully for them, Alabama won. So they could.
That's right.
You know, they could.
But you know how many Cowboys fans or Longhorn fans? By the way, you want to know like I have my fair share of like Texas Longhorn graduate friends, you know, like on Instagram and stuff. And the number of people that are like, "Hey, we beat the spread," and I'm like, "Who cares about the spread?" Like that was like the most Texas pat yourself on the back.
Yeah, look at us.
Beat the spread. No, you lost and you shouldn't have lost.
Oh,
you literally gave it away. By the way, that going back and what this would be the end of it here. I first started doing these quarterback camps with Richmond Flowers. He sort of put this thing together, this quarterback collective stuff. And he used those relationships with Sean McVay and Kyle and Matt LaFleur to do this football camp. And those guys would show up. So you do a football camp with a lot of NFL coaches there.
Good players.
You get the best high school kids to show up at it.
Yeah.
So Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, a lot of these kids that are at, that are at these top programs now. I've been lucky enough to coach them a little bit in these camps, and the Bryce Young play where the corner blitzes and he makes him miss
ducks
and
under
runs for 20 yards. I mean,
big time.
Big time. And I mean, it was like the perfect defense call. They had usually have a hot running back in the flat there. Well, he was manned up with somebody that had like a linebacker that had him, and so for Bryce Young to make that play, I mean, just clutch. For a young guy, he is cool and calm under fire. And, I don't know if he'll be a great NFL player.
Yeah, he's a little guy.
He's a little guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a big arm, but his accuracy and his quick release, I'd like to think that he can play in the league. But, man, phenomenal college football player. Well,
Sage, hey, have a great call this weekend. It'll be fun to watch you on ESPN+. So I won't be there with you. It's kind of sad that they're stealing my analyst away from me on ESPN+, but that's okay.
I know.
We'll do it again someday, my friend.
I'll have you in spirit. I'll probably call you later in the week for insights
because
you'll know, like, hey, the third guard for Iowa State. What's give me some good information, some nuggets about him, and you'll give that to me.
Sage,
so in case he goes in, I'll have something.
Here's your gold key to the game. Don't have 2 punts blocked. Okay. No more.
Well, no more special teams blunders, Cyclones.
Yes.
Come on, Matt.
Come on, let's figure it out.
Let's get the special teams together.
Could be a good year. We'll have a good call, and we'll talk. Where are you going to be next week? Philly?
Next week will be Philly. Got a charity event on Tuesday night, and I believe we have a famous Iowa State alum that is a Philadelphia resident.
Okay.
That'll be the
we're going to effort
for next week.
Perfect.
So hopefully that works out. He agreed to it, and we'll see if we can make it happen.
Awesome, Sage. Well, hey, safe travels out to Philly. Enjoy the call this weekend. We'll all be watching, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Sounds good.